All right, well, let's dive into this week's conversation in consciousness, which is going to be more of a heated discussion than it is an actual energy update. Although I think this is coming to the surface really for a reason, because there's so many things that have been happening within the metaphysical, mystic communities, the intuitive teachers, et cetera, in the last little while, that I think this is really timely.
It seems to be.
Yeah, there's something in the water, but I need to give you guys a star asterisk caveat to not confuse passion and animated discussions with triggers. Because if you miss what we're about to talk about, which is the way we assign archetypes, you're also likely in the category who's assigning intention and meaning behind people's words without knowing all of stories. And so it's going to be really, really important in this conversation that you really check yourself and look at your different triggers that are coming up to it. Because if you hear something and you're automatically, and coming off the hinges with it, that's not a me problem. That's something that got hit within your field that either has an emotional resonance, or there's a cord and contract there, or an akashic sitting, or something that needs to be moved in your own reality. So number one, Violet and I are not triggered about anything we're about to speak on in the next little bit of this conversation, but we are animated storytellers and we can bring things to life very easily. And so if you have a hard time discerning sarcasm, a little bit of joking, a little bit of lightness with a little bit of drama,
Jazz hands in the mix.
Jazz hands, this is your opportunity to see us as a musical so that you take us a little less seriously and hopefully hear the undertones of the message that we're about to share. Okay, there's my star after caveat. I think it was a good one.
I think so too.
So I'm actually going to start this story off with, there's now a series on TikTok about me that is 12 episodes long. And all the reasons of why I'm a horrible person, and so is this community. And in this series, there's a lot of things that are being shared by this one person that have brought some other people together because of their own various things they're in. And it is really interesting because this has also been seen by other people that are aware of who these folks are and know a little bit of their story and are also horrified by the things they're putting on the internet, because they're like, what the actual F-bomb, right? They're pretty like, what are you doing? But it's also causing some disruption in their own energy fields because they have their own feelings about what they think right versus wrong is, or what they think could be truth versus lies, all of these things. And they're all valid experiences to be having. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the interesting things that happens, I wouldn't get TikTok if none of you guys have seen their terms and conditions. Did you know they're actually allowed to watch all of your swiping patterns on your screen? TikTok has all of your typings, all of your passwords, and it doesn't shut off even when you have the app off. So logging into your banking, they have that information. Every email you type, they have that information. They track the shit out of you, and you give all of your information away. So I don't go on the TikTok. I think it's dangerous AF. And yeah, anyways, I won't go down that route. I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things, and that's another one that I can't, not aligned with my values. I can't. Anyway, this person is very ticked off with me. Very ticked off with me. And it actually started happening last September. And, I think back then, a lot of people had some perceptions of what they thought happened based on, this person said this person said that, this person said that. But to be honest, it's kind of all irrelevant. So the first thing I'm going to give you guys is that when there's so much drama and story around things, if you're obsessed with that part, you're missing the entire point. The point is there's a new level of cord and contracts that I have never taught you guys about. I've never put this out publicly. You're the first ones to hear it. I haven't even spoken to our upper level decoders and students about this. Like, this is the first time this is coming out?
I think a lot of them have picked up on it just in their own experience, though, without even
Yes.
realizing, though.
We're just going to put language to it today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There is a type of cord and contract that builds between perception of student to teacher, or within perception of hierarchy, when somebody sees another person as being something they might not be. Now that's a lot of like hypothetical this and that, and without a lot of language, but we're going to make this very real for a second. All of you guys have an opinion about who I am to you and who Violet is to you. You all have an opinion of what our archetype is. So as an example, you may have given me title identities. You may have said, oh, Caitlin is my teacher. Oh, she's my healer. Oh, she's my coach. You may have said, similar things about Violet, or you might have come up with a whole other list of identities or titles for us. When you do that, Violet and I aren't necessarily in agreement with your assignment of perception of who we are to you, but what we're in agreement to on our end in entering into a relationship with you is the fact that we can hold space for however you need us to be to get what you are requiring from this human existence. So you may see me as your teacher right now, and you may assign me all of these different roles, like she's so knowledgeable, she has all this stuff she can give to us, she knows all the sequences, the steps, whatever your story. And as a part of that journey, it could be partially true. Okay, so there could be parts of that yes, I am transferring knowledge to you, I'm giving you steps, I'm giving you a whole bunch of tools, whatever that is. So yes, I could be actually fulfilling part of the teacher role. But there's another part of that you likely haven't looked at in the cords and contracts, where you have something to learn about the assignment you have given me and my soul for this part of your journey.
It's very meta. It's like
it's very meta
within a lesson within a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Likely there's something in it for you to recognize that you're still playing into this game of seeing yourself as less than, not as experienced as, not at the same level as, maybe even going as far as feeling excluded or disconnected, or not the star student, or not the favorite, or whatever those things are that come up for you. Okay. So we have this new level of cord and contractor where you have created an assignment coming into a relationship, but I'm not necessarily in agreement and going to play the same game that you are. In fact, I might never enter the game at all. Now, every victim needs to maintain a villain in their story. Okay, every victim, please hear me on this, needs to maintain a villain in their story. And sometimes in this whole metaphysical reality, the teachers, the healers, the people that are the thought leaders get assigned that role because we can handle the heat in the kitchen. Not very many people can, but I can handle your false assignment of me being your villain so that you can maintain your perception of victimhood. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Go ahead.
The other side of that is oftentimes the person who is in that victim position is not seeing themselves in that way. So they see themselves more as a hero that has been victimized by this person, right? And so I know, like, I've been through that situation, and that was me in that in that time. It was like I went from being a victim to becoming empowered to then being victimized by my mentor to then rising into the hero story.
So let's actually go through your journey a little bit, because I think this will create a really good launch point for people to see. So quite a few years ago, Violet worked for another person in kind of the same sort of realm, like same, but different, you know? And she
Eerily
went,
similar, like
yeah,
eerily similar situation. Like she was doing online coaching programs. It was a little less metaphysical, although there was definitely aspects of that, but it was more on the like taking your power back trauma stuff. And that was about it was 2017 when I started working with her. Yeah.
okay, so take us through, because at that time, you had just started coming out of a little bit of that depression. You were starting to go, I'm putting both feet into life. I'm going to try and figure this out.
And then
you
she appeared.
find her. She appeared.
Yeah. So she appeared in my life when I finally made that decision of like, okay, I'm not, going to stay in this limbo, and I'm not going to choose to exit. I'm actually going to do this life, and I'm going to like really try here and see what I can create from it. And of course, as soon as you do that, all the synchronicities show up, all the people start showing up in your life, everything starts lining up, and you start following it. That's exactly what happened to me. So she showed up in my experience, and she was teaching things it was just the perception shifts in me. It was so immediate and so huge. Really helped me to start like pulling out of that depression state into a state of, okay, I can actually do something with this to overcome it and start taking accountability for myself. So she had a lot of knowledge that I didn't have at the time and that I needed to collect along the way. And so we had that, court and contract situation where she was going to be a mentor to me. And then along the way, as I started, clearing a lot of my stuff, and I went through all of her programs, of course, by the time I was in the last one, we actually started working together very similarly to how I'm working with Caitlin now. So I started doing her bookkeeping. I was helping her with some administrative stuff. I was helping her to just take her ideas and make them, into real programs and stuff. And I went to her house for a week. I stayed with her for a week in September 2017. And it was funny because that week was my very first class of Caitlin's, her Light Your Fire mastermind. So I was at her house when I was in the very first call there. So there was a little bit there was a little bit of overlap there, just kind of weird, because we had a big blow up when I was there at her house on like the second last day that I was going to be there. Things were just like not really working. We weren't jiving. So I went home. I had to have like some time to think about it. And then we talked again. And so we had this conversation where I was starting to really spiral out of control because I could see that this wasn't going to work, but I wanted it to work so bad. So I was like trying to hold on really tight to it. And I had a conversation with her where she was coaching me, but I didn't want to be coached in that moment. I was looking for a friend. And so when I told her, I was like, I need to know that we're still going to be friends if I say no to working with you like this. So I asked her for honesty in that moment. And she gave me honesty, but it wasn't the answer that I wanted. So she said no.
Pause there for a second. Yeah. You had built her up though in your mind as a particular archetype. And so what was that? Because who did you see her as in your life at that time?
It was kind of like a mix between like a mother figure, a best friend, she was like my savior basically in that moment. So I built her up to be my savior. She was the one who took me out of the crappy situation I was in and helped me to move out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you trauma bonded.
Yes.
Okay. So this is usually step one when people get really pissed off in the healing communities, is they participate on their end in a type of trauma bonding that the other person never actually enters into, and they create a false relationship of how they perceive their, connection to that person actually is.
Yeah. So in my mind, she was like my best friend.
Yeah.
But in her mind, that wasn't the situation.
She probably didn't even call you a friend, really.
Well, she did sometimes. And we hung out, and like I stayed at her house, you know, so we were friendly in that way. There was definitely some like relationship things getting crossed there where it wasn't clear.
Right.
Like it wasn't clear. And so I was picking up on things and using it as like, see, this is how I know that she's like one of my best friends. So then when I was at risk of like, when I was seeing that the working relationship wasn't really going to work for me, and I recognized that what was going to happen, like my biggest fear at that time was that I was going to lose that friendship. But then she was honest with me and was like, I'm actually not interested in friends outside of this thing that I'm building. So if you're like off the ship, we probably won't talk anymore. And I spiraled in that moment. I went down. I didn't talk to her. Like I stopped talking to her. I went straight into my suicidal thoughts again. I like tanked right in that moment, like instantaneously. But the other thing that happened was within about a 5-minute period, I went, wait a minute, this isn't how I react anymore. I'm not going to allow somebody to treat me like this. And I got mad about it. And then I took my power back and ended the relationship.
Which is funny because I can only speak from the other side because I haven't been in a dynamic like on your end, how you have, but on my end, the relationship was already done the minute you crossed the boundary line.
Yeah, but I couldn't see that. So in my mind, I had this idea of who she was supposed to be in my life. And then she told me that she couldn't be that. And it just like, it affected my entire, my perception of reality, my perception of who I was, my perception of my value as a person. So my entire identity was wrapped up in the story.
Right. Students do this to me all the time, coming through the Decodes program, actually, because a lot of them come into this wanting to heal themselves. And then they come in still from a little bit of a traumatized, victimized mindset from whatever else has gone on in their lives. And so they assign me some kind of archetypal role that they are expecting me to fulfill. And they look at me and they say, this is who you now are to me. And so you better be like this, without ever asking me if I'm willing to be that for them.
Yeah, it's almost like if you think about if somebody were to like be interested in dating you and they created in their mind an entire relationship with you, and maybe you guys interacted on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But you hadn't actually been like, yeah, I want to have this like romantic relationship with you. Maybe you just saw each other at the same coffee shop every week and just chatted about your work day. So in your mind, you're like, this is just somebody that I bump into sometimes. And in their mind, they have an entire story going on about who you are to them. And that's what I did to this coach that I was working with.
Right.
Yeah.
And so our minds and our perceptions and the stories we build are powerful because they will shape our future reality for as long as we let that story run. Now, I'm going to share candidly about this because I figure at this point, if somebody's actually name dropping me on the TikTok and thinks it's like okay to behave this way, that I don't really have to hold back. I can kind of share candidly. We had a situation last fall with somebody who we actually brought onto our team because we could see a lot of potential in them. And we saw so many glimmers of where things could be amazing and, you know, they could really rise into their greatness. But we also had a really good number of red flags that we were constantly like, hey, hold the phone, pull back. We had a line get crossed last September with this particular person because I assigned trust for them to look after something bigger than they had ever looked after for us in our company before. And they broke that line of accountability and trust by, number one, hurting a student, a fellow student at a workshop badly. And I'll talk a little bit about it. But number two, the part that actually drove the nail in the coffin was the part where they didn't want to take accountability and instead looked at me as the perpetrator to their pain for a situation they caused themselves. And so they went from seeing me as the archetype of the boss, the teacher, the mentor to the villain in their story, because I took something away from them, which was access to my students and my programs and the clients that were paying them. And I said, you need to figure out how you got into this situation. I need to see you track this backwards. I need to see that you're never going to do this again, because you can hurt people with energy work, folks. I don't know if you knew that, but this person put one of our other students into a full-blown psychosis. Their hormones went so haywire and their nervous system went so haywire that it took Faith and I 5 days to not only get this person from where they were driven back partway across the country home, which should have taken them like 8 hours. Took us 5 days. We did that while we were sick with COVID. We did that while we were dealing with one of our other students who ended up getting COVID and dying. We had to hold space for all this, and to be told to our faces that you did nothing wrong, fuck you. Nail in coffin. Done. Because lack of radical accountability for the relationship you want to be in with me, as soon as you can't, I'm out. Right? The other thing that was really interesting is retroactively, we always find out things about situations and stories from people after things have transpired.
Yeah.
It's just an inevitability. You guys know this. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at. As soon as, something happens, somebody feels safe to come tell you more of the story. And it just validated all the red flags we were feeling. Like, this person told the students at this particular workshop, don't tell Caitlin. Don't tell Caitlin this is happening. We can figure this out. I'll handle this. I got this. She almost killed somebody and got them committed to a mental institute. You don't got this. You're a fucking idiot. And I'm not holding back on this one, because healers are hurting people. And when we're in this cord contract game where now you're flipping it to wanting to maintain your victimized villainhood, you're now creating something called the 21st dimension of mirrors. So here's the next level to this cord and contracture that we haven't taught you guys about yet. I'm teaching on it this fall. It's coming out in September. In the 21st dimension of mirrors, everything you are holding on to as relational story and archetypal energy or possibility of behavior gets refracted back to you, in you, and out of you into every single person that steps forward in your periphery to help you amplify and then collapse and drop that story. And so what happens for you folks, if you've been in these situations like Violet has, or like this other person has chosen, and this is happening to Teal Swan right now too. If you guys haven't seen her story, that one's a real interesting one. There was a whole entire video, documentary. Thank you. I was like, there's a word for this. Teal's getting targeted like crazy right now with a shit ton of people who refuse to use discernment and actually look after their own well-being and quit crying wolf and quit playing the victim. Okay. Now, I'm not saying I don't agree with everything she does. I don't know her. I haven't done her programs. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to this level of cord and contractor that people create with the people they perceive to be their teachers, mentors, healers, and hierarchical archetypes in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem for each of you that does this, though. The instant that you go on and you seal it, the archetype leaves the picture. So, for example, I stepped out of Kelly's zone. I'm out. And now we just watch it burn. Okay? And I'm not saying that in a mean way. She's just got a big soul level lesson that she's programmed into her field, likely something she's repeated before. And that's okay. We all have this stuff. But now what we're going to see is she's going to replicate the exact same scenario she played out with me in as many of her now followers and students as it takes before she crashes and burns and learns that she can't assign false relationships and she must come into radical self-sovereignty and accountability. Some people will never learn. We all have grandparents in our lives that would have gone through like 80, 90 years and we're like, geez, Murphy, like, do not hear yourself speak. Like, you think by now, right? Like, we all have people in our life.
Well, and it's not just the people in our life, but like, if you look at this just on a mass scale, like this is happening everywhere. Like I went through it, most people have, and I'm wondering if there's like a connection here with that whole, like, you know, the guru thing and how we can't keep looking at people in that way as the saviors. Like we have some pretty amazing messengers on the planet right now, and we have throughout history, right, who come and they seem to be a clear channel or have a connection to a larger story to help the rest of us come out of that fog state. But then oftentimes what we do is we put them on a pedestal, and we've been repeating this for eons.
I actually don't think it's isolated to the metaphysical community at all, because people are doing it with certain factions of government.
Right.
They're doing it with certain parts of big pharma. They're doing it with certain types of medicine. You know, it's in every sector. It's not isolated.
Well, and really, I mean, if you really look at it, we can't rise into that new Earth blueprint if all of us are still playing that game.
Yep. Everybody's just holding it back. Like, and I just sit here and I'm like, I'm just going to go pet my chicken.
This is just like one of those really big Akashic records that the planet itself and humanity needs to just unwind. That's all it is. But it's coming up right now, which to me tells me that a lot of us are ready to actually let it go.
Yeah, exactly. When it's coming up in themes, when it's coming up in patterns, when it's coming up in sequences, that's always our invitation to really, really deep dive and go, okay, let this trigger me. So this is rule number one. Let this trigger me. Let it hit me in all the right places so I know exactly where this is all sitting, where I'm playing into it, what games and art forms I've used to hold this in place, or where I may be amplifying it and using it to my advantage to actually stay small, never rise, and continue the same games I've used throughout my entire life.
And if I were truly sovereign, what would I actually be choosing in this moment?
Because the sovereign person, the sovereign healer, the sovereign government archetype, the politician who's actually aligned does not build movements off vindication. Hear me again. The sovereign being who is actually aligned does not build movements off of vindication.
We can't have a fight against or a war against anything. It doesn't work. Right?
Yeah. And not only that, all you're doing is acting out the other side of the resonance field without actually elevating.
It's just a fourth dimensional game at that point.
Which tells me you're still looking through a very diluted, distorted lens. And that's not a judgment. It just is where we are in humanity. But it really sucks to see people who are talented AF, like Kelly is, because she has some amazing brightness in her. Like Teal, she didn't play into it, which I appreciate. She hasn't actually gone and like yelled at anybody. She's just doing her thing.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks my heart a little bit to see people play games like this. It does. Because all it does is rob you of your greatness. All it does is take you off track, take you off mission. So let's bring this back closer to home. You guys might even be doing this with the assignments you've given to your partners and your children. You may have assigned your spouse, I'm in a relationship, obviously, with my husband. I've given him the title of husband, and I may have built the word husband up to mean something that it doesn't mean to him.
Certain roles to fulfill, certain things that he's supposed to act out or do for you, for the family, for himself, for everyone.
And he may not have equally entered into that contractual agreement with me. Okay, doesn't matter that we passed marriage vows. If I didn't say to Steve, here's what I perceive you as a husband need to be, and this is what I think it's all about, are you able to hold this, feel this, live up to this? If he doesn't know that whole periphery of what the intended relationship is, he can never be who I wanted him or visioned him to be, and he's always going to fall short of my expectations. If I see my children and I look at them and I go, you are my child, so you must, ba, 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 and this is who you're going to grow up to be, and this is how, you're going to be as a successful human being, and these are the things I have to instill in you. But I never entered into that agreement and they bought into it and or said to me, this is exactly what I want too, mommy. They're never going to live up to who I want them to be. Now, I can become the victim to those relationships. Okay, I see this a lot in my coaching, especially when I'm talking about relationships. I have so many mosquito bites, Violet, it's driving me crazy. I can become the victim to those relationships because of my own glass house I have built in this hall of mirrors where everything is actually a holographic lie.
It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. So let's just keep this close to home one, because this is going to be the most relatable for you to all grab it. If it's not happening in your house, it's probably happening in somebody's house close to you. So let's keep this, we'll pretend it's me and my husband. Okay. So let's keep this really easy. If I have built my relationship and perceptions of it to be that he has to fill all 12 of these different contracts, in that 21st dimension hall of mirrors, where everything refracts back, light bounces, and everything is up, is down, is sideways, is inverted, is wider, is shorter, is denser, there lives thousands and thousands and thousands of stories that are all reality and lie at the same time, which means everything is convoluted, nothing makes sense, and I'm never going to find truth within it. So for as long as you keep lies in place, there is no truth. As long as you have false assignments, there is no way out of the hall of mirrors. The only way to break it is to shatter it and then get down to raw light. The only way through. And this is the part that nobody wants to do, because when you shatter it, you have no foundation anymore. People go, it's scary.
Well, because your entire identity and perception of reality, like I said at the beginning, your entire identity and perception of reality is tied into this. And so the idea of breaking it down feels like death.
Exactly.
Which is why the actual answer to it is awareness that it's happening in the first place.
Exactly. So what will happen is when I step into that hall of mirrors, I can't run from it. I can't run from it. In the 21st dimension, it's like this version of me is wearing a hat as I'm having the conversation, but then the next version's wearing a scarf, and that scarf and the color changes the dynamic, because then I put on a pair of shoes. And because I have the pair of shoes on, this word comes out of my mouth differently. And so there's all of these like fractals, fragments that hit back at our field, which will skew our perceptions of what is truth on the cords and contracts and Akashic records, which means any Akashics and cords and contracts we're trying to read while still entered into the hall of mirrors are also all a lie. They're just a convoluted mess.
There could be aspects of truth in it, but you can't track it. Like, it's not possible.
And so you will continue to create false assignments. I'll give you another example. This is one of my favorite ones. Sometimes when students get mad at me, they'll send me a message and be like, oh, we had one actually earlier this year who sent us an email and is like, I can't get into my Akashic records. I need help with this. I've never been able to track anything. I can't see, I can't feel, whatever. And we tried to set this person up with a mentor to help them out. We were like, okay, let's do an evaluation. Let's see what's actually in your way, blah, blah, blah. 3 emails later, because we didn't give them exactly what they wanted, which was like private time with me at that point, she sends me a message of what she's read in our collective Akashic records between the two of us. Oh, and yeah. I've persecuted and I've killed her before. And I always cut her down.
Lots of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Students,
So,
they'll start reading the Akashics and they'll be like, I read this Akashic between me and Caitlin, and this is what it said.
and we were sisters and she murdered me. Really? Are you sure? Because from that vantage point, if we actually looked at where you're standing between the bridge of your 4D identity, your 8D potentiality for this life, your 12D fractals, and your 21 refractions, and you can't tell your head from your butthole at this point of what you're supposed to be doing with your mission and your purpose, and yet you're so clear with your assignments of who everybody in your life should be. Give your head a shake. Come on now, friends. We need to step out of this stuff. And if we are still playing this game of playing the victimized villain when we're trying to track or unwind any of our story, you don't have a clue what's actually going on. So here's what you do. Number one, everything is not as it appears, and everything I have assigned and built and all the stories I have put together and all the links I thought I saw, I now destroy and uncreate them all times a gazillion. Everything I have perceived as truth, I now dissolve. Because anything that is true will build back up without story and inflation later.
Too much story is always a red flag.
Always. Okay. Next, anytime we take the finger and we are pointing it outwards and we are going, this person, that program, that community, that spouse, that friend, anytime that finger goes like this, and we are not clearly speaking about our participation in that game and how we chose to wield that energy, we have now entered the Hall of Mirrors, and there are now thousands of fingers pointing back to you that are ready to refract that lesson. Because guess what? There are more people on this planet willing to dance in the Hall of Mirrors than are willing to live in sovereignty. And they will happily enter into that dance for you and come to you like a magnet. So any friend, spouse, Akashic person, people who just magnetize you, boom, they're in. Fingers are going to be out there. Nobody is actually victimizing you in that way. Now, let me be clear, because there's going to be a bunch of you that are like, well, what about the sex offenders? What about the people who do this? What about? There are events that happen in our life that are abusive, traumatic, that we are the victim of a circumstance. Our body can be the victim of a crime, but we don't become the eternal victim to it. And that person, we don't villainize forever, but we never allow it in our field again.
Yeah, so it's the difference between learning from a situation you've been in and needing the other person to pay.
Right.
So they're same situation, two different ways of looking at it. And really it comes down to forgiveness, really. If you want to get really, really super simple with it, that's really what it comes down to.
I don't even like that word. You know what?
I don't either. I don't
forgive them.
It's so, well, the word itself is a whole grid. It's got a whole grid around it that people have, ideas, whatever about it. But I mean, that's what we have to do to clear a cord.
Yeah. And you know what? I will never, ever forget how people have treated me. I will never forget the words people have said. I will never forget how you made me feel. My mind remembers. The energy current remembers exactly who you showed me you wanted to be while you had your debut in my life. But I release you from ever having an actual impact on me ever again.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
And that at its core, that is what forgiveness actually is. Right. Behind all the stories and things that we've made it mean.
Yeah.
So if there is a trigger to it, if we're needing to fight against something, if we need somebody else to be wrong so we can be right, these are all very good signs that this is the position we're in. We're in that Hall of Mirrors. We've created a courting contract with another person where we had an expectation of who they were. We stopped seeing who they actually are, created a false reality of who they were, and then got really upset when they didn't fulfill that role that we made them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in this situation is, you know, in my reality, I had somebody that was seeing me as a teacher, mentor, boss. And then when I put the foot down, I said, I'm being none of those things until, you know, we can see where you're at, because you're never hurting another one of my clients again. And I need to know, you know what you did. As soon as that switch flipped, that person created a new identity for me. And they started deciding that my life mission, you know, and I'm probably being a little dramatic and facetious here, but that my life mission was now to undermine and cut them down. What they didn't tell you publicly is that we gave them very clear boundaries. We gave them very specific tracking that we wanted to see them do. We had very distinct conversations as a team to say, here's the things that went wrong. Here's where the communication would have been improved. Here's the things that were not okay in our books. This is not how our team operates. Like, you don't tell other students to not tell me things because you know I'm going to be upset. Yeah, I'm going to be upset, nearly hospitalize somebody. Those things are not okay in my books, but here's how I'm going to coach you through. If you want to create a new archetype for me as now being the villain in your story because it changed your whole reality of who you thought you were, that's your prerogative. Go hard, my friend. Go hard. But here's what's happening now. I'm no longer holding the end of the rope. The archetype has left the building and you've now become the new archetype, and I'm assigning you to this mission of figuring your stuff out, because I'm not doing it with you anymore until you rise. So now you're going to figure it out with 10, 20, hundreds of people until you get what you were looking for out of that assignment. Why do people keep going back to narcissists? False assignment of who they want that person to be. Why do people keep entering into abusive relationships? False assignment and potentiality of who they want that person to be. That's all it is at its core, you guys. That's all. And if we can start to see that, and we can start working with people at who they're forward facing as, instead of their potentiality of what we hope they'll become, it's a lot easier to maintain relationships like that and to enjoy relationships like that. Because if we're living in the potential, we've missed the whole power of now and the journey that's available to us. We're setting them up for failure. And that's my part of the learning in this. My part of the responsibility is I now no longer hire people who have potential. I hire people who are already there. I no longer recommend people to my clients who are learning. I recommend masters who are owning their craft and are so radically responsible that I know that they will never cross those boundaries because it's actually their nature not to do so. That's my part. I no longer hire for potential. And that was actually a 10-year-long experience and learning for me, because that started when I started my horseback riding facility, and the people I wanted to hire to hold the ship never could live up to expectations because I saw who they could become, not who they were choosing to be.
So that was like your side of the original contract.
Exactly. So thank you, Kelly, for holding that up for me.
So then once you learn that, the contract is now complete.
Complete. I'm good. I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't need that one.
But if one party didn't get the thing they needed, they're going to have to go find somebody else to start that up again.
Right.
This is where we get into that repeating pattern, repeating the same lesson over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Tricky, sticky, right? Like, it's so tricky. And we need to be careful, you know, of how we assign our energy, our stories, our contracts, the archetypes in our life. And if we can start being more mindful of that, our lives are going to get a hell of a lot more messy. You know, we can get out of, or get a hell of a lot less messy. I was like, not more, less. We can get out of all of these entangled relationships that don't make sense, the ones that don't light us up, the ones that are dragging us down, The only reason they drag is because you can never see the exit point of truth. The only reason they're making you tired to be in those relationships. We could get a whole lot more meta. People do this to themselves. You want to go on that conversation too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Package this one up in a pretty little bow.
We might as well. If we're going to get really meta on you guys, let's go here.
Mm-hmm.
You can enter into your own archetypal agreement with yourself in your own hull of lies and mirrors.
Oh God.
Hear me out on this one. You know, can I use a really triggered subject
For
in
who?
right now?
Triggering for who?
Probably people. There's a really interesting thing that happens in the healing communities that everybody and their mom is now a healer because they took a weekend course, so now they're qualified to do it. Actually, this is going to sound really asshole-ish, so you guys deal with this however you want to deal with it. I don't even think the decoders that have worked with me for a year and a half are yet qualified to do it. I think they are still students to all the people who are coming to teach them about what it actually means to be a practitioner as they're coming out into the world. And I can only say this because I had to walk through that same gateway too. I went to a weekend Reiki course, my friends, and I was like, look at me, I'm a level 1 practitioner. Let me put my hands on you. I got you. And I'm not slamming the Reiki. All right. It had its place. It's a gateway. We know that.
Yeah.
But to think that we can now assign ourselves a title and an archetype of an I am without ever coming through that gateway of actually laying the foundations and becoming the student to our craft, we assign a false sense of mastery so that we can teach ourselves the lesson of we weren't actually there.
Oh no.
Oh no.
It's a really messy way, but probably somewhat effective if you can catch it.
Which some people do. Some people do. So what happens? You know, let's talk this one through because so many of you guys are in this group, or maybe you're going to hear this later on the replay on the YouTube podcast, whatever, and you have made it your life's work. You know you want to be a healer and helper. So you go take the little weekend course, you apprentice with somebody for a year and you're like, damn, I got this. I'm ready to go. No, you're ready to practice. You're ready to become the student of the people you're about to meet. You are not yet the master. I am not the master. I'm pretty good at a lot of angles of my craft. There are some things that I would actually say I'm a master because I do it better than anybody else in this industry does it. But there are a lot of things that I am still the student to each of you for. And you know what? There's a bunch of you that probably just got triggered about that because you don't want to be the student, because we all have these triggers from our childhood of what being a student actually means, because that's been hijacked from us.
Mm-hmm.
But the real alchemists and the real masters know that the most powerful time in our journeys here on this earth plane is when we are in the student role and we're actually letting life and experiences teach us so that we can grow. The instant we try to elevate into the hierarchy, into the person who knows all the things, into the guru, the teacher, you know, the dispeller of all the ancient truths, whatever that fucking title is that we have now blocked all the downloads, the information, and everything that needs to enter into our periphery and path that allows us to get better, to grow stronger, and to be able to help more people down the road. And so the messy lesson we get into, and we self-create this on this planet because this is a false light reality that has to crack and fracture, is this idea that we ever get to a space where we can wear this hat of only being the master. So let's get even a little bit deeper. Masters are always still learning.
Yeah.
I actually want to talk about one of my students that I didn't ever know if she was actually going to make it. And I'm going to speak now, ask for forgiveness later.
Okay.
I want to talk about Benita,
Oh yeah.
our beautiful Benita. I want to talk about her a little bit because
Okay.
Benita has turned into one of our most potent practitioners on our team. But when she came in, she wanted to be the student. She's so eager. You guys, if you've met her, if you've learned from her, if you've hung out with her, not only is she like a barrel of monkeys, super fun, but she's curious as all get out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot of fun because of her Saskatchewan route. Sometimes we have to like expand her horizons, teach her new foods, take her to places that she didn't know existed, which is great. We love it.
Yeah.
But when Benita first came in, I didn't think she was going to make it. And the reason I didn't think she could make it at that point is because she hadn't figured out how to actually be the student yet, because she was still trying to hold the front up of I've got this and I've already got it figured out. That was kind of like the subconscious programming behind it. It was like there was an incongruency between the words and the actions. Now, fast forward 3.5, 4 years later, Benita, who didn't see herself as a student, thought she couldn't learn, thought she wasn't smart enough, thought she, was all these things that school had assigned her, a dropout, whatever those things are, is now taking extra courses, adding different tools to her box, learned her homeopathy and is starting to integrate that with clients, went and learned an entire detox system, went and did this over here, and she's still learning and adding while simultaneously, and this is the art form, while simultaneously saying, these are the things I rock at, so I'm going to do that while I grow. I'm going to do that while I grow. And that is the mark of a master who now understands their craft and knows I can hold this pocket while also expanding further. And as soon as the master stops and they're like, I've got this, and they stop learning, they stop growing, they put the cap on it, and they just are like, this is all I'm ever going to be. And they don't say that. They see themselves as like this level of arrival. They stop the growth of their students and the people below them. Period.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there's people in the comments talking about like remaining humble. And I have like a reverse of this story.
Sure.
This Benita story. So I
okay, I know where you're going. Yeah.
I have gone through a few different identity like crises and collapses and then, whatever over the years, especially lately. But yeah, one of my more recent ones, one of the ones that I'm like just coming out onto the other side of now is this idea of being simultaneously perfect, but also not ever good enough. So I would get really, really good at things, but then I would tell people that I wasn't good at them. And I've been doing this forever.
Cute.
Yeah. So I wanted to manage expectations. I didn't want to put that pressure on myself to have to be really, really good at things. So I would tell people things like, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying this. I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to try it. I'm going to see, which is on one level, a really great kind of attitude to have going into something, is not needing to be perfect, because I've struggled with perfection. But what it kind of transferred into was this reverse identity where I'm never good enough and nothing I do is actually good. And I've said it so many times that I'm pretty sure I've convinced people in my life that I'm actually not good at anything.
Impressive.
Or I've at least invited that to be the situation.
So you may have even helped them build an archetype
Yep.
of who you are.
Yep.
By the things you repeated and believed about yourself so many times that now they're like, yeah, I believe that about Violet too, because she's told me.
So many times. I've said it so many times. Like
now you're both in a hall of mirrors
about
the situation, because both of you don't know the truth about it anymore.
And the funny thing is, it's all based on my perception and my reputation. That's the thing. That was the clue for me. Is like, I was so concerned about my reputation that I was making decisions to avoid having a bad reputation. So I didn't want anyone to see me as somebody who thought I was good at everything, because then if I made a mistake, they would be holding me to a level that I couldn't ever reach. So then I tried to manage expectations by saying that I really wasn't good at anything. And that way, when I inevitably made a mistake, they'd be like, okay, well, she prepared me for this. But actually what was happening was, okay, well, there's proof that she actually isn't good at any of this stuff. And I was trying to hold on to this like reputation piece, but I was actually like sinking my reputation in the process.
So why did you do that? Because you were already in the 21st hall of mirrors and you couldn't see the truth of any of the situations. So it didn't matter what you did, you couldn't see who you actually were.
Because of because I needed my reality to look or be a certain way. I had this idea of what it was. I had an idea of who I was and who other people were to me in my life. And I needed to maintain that narrative. And this was all happening unconsciously. Like, I need you guys to understand this. I can only see it now on the other side of it.
It's not like she was sitting there at that time being like, okay,
No.
how do I manifest everybody seeing me like this?
No, I had no clue I was doing this. I started seeing like repeating patterns of people reacting to me and situations falling apart that shouldn't have. And I was like, why does this keep happening to me? Yeah. So I had to dig into that this is the thing that I've been like unpacking over the last, especially July, I would say, especially July.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I could see that I had attached my identity to this, and I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? So I was like ready to clear it. But yeah.
The things we do, man.
It's so crazy. But it's all from that space of unconsciousness.
So here's what I'm going to say to you guys. You are most likely going to get swept up into these kinds of frequencies if you are still operating from unmet needs or unresolved, perceived or real traumas and inflictions on your energy field from your childhood and your youth in this lifetime, not even necessarily past lifetimes, but this lifetime. And if you have not cleaned that up and you have not changed your behaviors and you are still seeing those actions in everybody around you, example, one for me was in my youth, I was bullied a lot, made fun of, and then I tried to become, this is kind of a near to my heart story. I don't know if I've shared this with you guys before, but whatever, here we go. Let's put it publicly on the internet. Sorry, mother-in-law, if you watch this. One of the stories in high school, I had this group of mean girls that constantly, it didn't matter what I did, what I wore, who I talked to, what I was doing, had something to say about me. I actually had a friend get kicked out of her house that my mom said could come stay with us for a while until she figured out what to do. And that person who came to live with me started a rumor in the school. And she started to whisper to all of her friends that I had all of these boyfriends that I was having adult exercise time with every couple of days. They were in and out, revolving door, and she was sharing a bedroom with me, and it was so gross, and she couldn't believe it was happening. Yeah.
Wow.
She started spreading this rumor at school, and then she spread it about one of the popular girls' boyfriends was one of those people.
Uh-oh, drama.
Big drama. I got cornered one day in grade 12. October, November-ish, grade 12, 2004. It's a study hall period, so nobody's around. And those 4 girls came up and saw me on the mezzanine of Bev Facey High School and started shoving me around, barking in my face, getting pissed off because obviously I tricked their boyfriend, because apparently I was so fugly at the time, into sleeping with me because I obviously promised him things that she wouldn't do. The boyfriend was not my cup of tea, by the way. And they started hitting me. And I told her, hit me. And I moved so that the cameras were right there in the school. I was like, fine, come at me. You want to take me out? Take me out. She hit me one more time. And I took my hand and I fucking broke her nose. I pushed it up into her face. And I looked at her and I said, you will never lay a finger on me again. I walked down to the office that day because I had already talked to the administration a few times. I looked at them dead in the eye, and I'm sure with a level of Scorpio rage any of you guys could ever even fathom coming up from this little innocent face. And I said, I have spoken to you so many times about the ostracization, the bullying, and the unsafe nature that is happening in this high school. You can't keep my body safe, you can't keep my mind safe, and you can't keep my soul safe. So I refuse to be a victim of this institution. I'm leaving. I took my shit out of my locker and I never walked back in that school again. I stepped out, and instead of becoming the victim to those bullies who could have shut down, been a dropout, all those things, I took a day and I started to go, how do I rise? How do I rise? Because I wasn't okay being a high school dropout. Now, if I had stayed in that situation and continued letting all those things happen, I would have built the Hall of Mirrors, not only for myself, assigning myself the version of the victim I thought I could have been. I would have taken on the archetype of the village high school slut. And I would have started to build into all of the versions of me they wanted me to be. And this is the thing that you guys, if you're entering into these situations, are doing wrong or keeping you in it longer, is you become the archetype they want you to be. You're like, well, if I can't beat them, join them. If I can't not be the slut in their eyes, then I'll just sleep with 3 more people. If I can't be the bully, the narcissist, the mean person, well, I guess I'll just be that because that's all they can ever see me as. That's the mistake you're making. You're entering into the Hall of Mirrors where there's never an exit, and you're playing in everybody's pool of lies, including now your own, and going against everything that is your nature. I choose differently every day of my life, and this has always been who I am. And I look at those situations and I go, I refuse to be what people are painting me as because I know that's not who I am. I see my part in this situation. If I was even a participant, sometimes you're just the false archetype that people target. And here's how I'm rising next, with or without you. Exactly. I refuse to become somebody else's self-fulfilling prophecy and to wreck my life on account of somebody else's truth.
Okay, but like before we kind of wrap up, because I know we're going on really long here. Somebody listening to this couldn't you, like, I feel like they're going to have this question about this situation because you just told the story about being in school, the bullies, and then you coming out of that.
Yeah.
Couldn't that be considered a situation where you are now making them the villain in your hero's journey? Right? So doing the same thing, is there something that you've done? Like, have you forgiven?
They're not my villain. I'm not the victim to them.
Right.
They didn't wreck my life. They didn't take me out. They didn't destroy any of the things I was going to do. They didn't take me off course. They didn't change my career decisions. They didn't change any of the relationships that were near and dear to my heart. I'm not the victim to them. They're not even the villain. They were just playing out a role that they thought they needed to be in by falsely assigning an archetype to me of being this type of person. And I looked at it and I went, I'm not going to be the victim to you. I'm not even playing in this assignment of roles.
So that's the piece. In that situation, they were bullying you, but you're not seeing them as the villain.
No.
Yeah. It was
They're
just a high
playing a
school
game.
situation. It was just high school.
But this is exactly what this person, well, we've already name dropped, is doing on TikTok right now.
Mm-hmm.
She's the new Britney, except I'm not playing. Like, you're not changing my life. This doesn't change how I help people. This doesn't override the fact, and this is what I need you guys to hear in your own lives, because idiots are going to try and take you out. People are going to try and pull you off course. People are going to see you for changing something or being jealous or envious or whatever the assignment is. They're going to try and take you out. They're going to want to make you the villain in their story. You need to rise anyways without them. And if you change your trajectory based on somebody's false assignments, you've now entered into that 21 hall of mirrors, not only with your own, but theirs too. That's it. So how you know is you go, am I actually triggered? No. Do I actually believe the things that are being said? No, I don't see that in myself. When I look at the impact I've had on other people around me, is this actually even true? No. Right? So these are the questions you guys are asking yourselves, right? Going through this. If I let this change my course of action, if I stop doing Facebook Lives, if I stop putting things on YouTube, if I don't show up to my husband in this way, if I don't parent anymore, is that actually aligned with soul? Or is this actually an invitation to completely take me off track? And do I want that?
Radical self-accountability.
It is radical self-accountability.
Yeah.
And what I wish all these people knew that are taking themselves off track and focusing on that victim villainhood is that all they're doing is taking a really, really long road that's going to really divert them away from soul's purpose for a little while until they eventually get the hint and they come back. They're just distracting themselves. That's it. Okay. I know this was a big conversation. I know that for some of you, there's probably some triggers in here. I know that this is one of those things that starts to surface some of the ways we've behaved in our lives, or some of the ways that we still feel trapped in our own hall of mirrors where we can't see the way through. I understand that when we start getting into these level of metaphysical and mystic topics, that it can feel really unnerving and unsettling because we feel like we don't know what to do. But I need to bring you guys back to a couple of really simple truths, because the truth is you all know what to do. The tools never change. Round one, you recognize that you're in these situations. Am I choosing to play into somebody's iteration of who they think I am? Or am I actually focused on self and my trajectory and where I'm going?
Is this even mine?
Is this even mine? Tool number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I destroy and uncreate everything I thought and bought as truth within my Akashic records or the iterations of the cords and contracts I've been reading and assigning meaning and story to. Collapse it all now. Get rid of it. 0 point it all. I am willing to crack my foundations and come back to ground zero to actually reset my entire energy field and 0 point and get back on my axis. Step 3. I am willing to actually acknowledge and look at how I have effectively played the game in this situation and supported and been a supporting or leading role in this unfolding drama.
I'm willing to look at where I have been both a victim and a perpetrator in this storyline, in this lifetime and any others.
I wouldn't go any others yet.
Okay, in this lifetime.
In this lifetime. Only what you can actually see and validate because you were there.
Yeah.
Because this will keep it not messy.
Right.
Right? Next, I release everybody from my field who is helping to hold this story and game intact so that we can all take a breather and see what we were choosing with each other. I release you all. Game over. It's recess. mother truckers. Okay. From there, we now have to clean up the energy body and the physical body from the Hall of Mirrors. This is where you guys go back to clearing statements. You go back to everywhere I bought and sold this as truth. Everywhere I perceived this as the way it was. Everywhere I've decided these were the judgments or this person was the collapse it all. Everything you can think about, because they're all little elements and filaments that are going to be sitting in your field that you can rip apart. Delete, destroy, uncreate, destroy, uncreate, destroy, uncreate. Pull it all out. Emotion body. What is sitting and impacting my heart, my lungs, my stomach, my intestines? Hey, fat cells, how are you holding the resonance field of this? And which ones of you need to be released next so that we can change this whole trajectory? Hey, toxins, what have you bound to in this Hall of Mirrors to help me keep this story in play? I now release that now through my shit, through my sweat, through my breath, through my movement. Okay, literally, physically, get it out.
Yeah.
You don't even go into the Akashic records or your cords and contracts until this is pumping and moving and you are now going, okay, I'm out of the game. Oh, I'm out of the game. I'm out of the game. Oh my. Once you get to that point, oh, that's the sexy point now.
That's the shatter point.
This is the shatter point. Exactly. This is now where we can finally see what's true, what the point of origin is on the situation in the Akashics without the noise, where we can collapse it through the entire Bordos field for good. Period. Okay. I feel like we probably just hit most of you with a wrecking ball of information. Let us know in the comments, whether you're listening to this on replay or live, what you guys are pulling out of this conversation, what you're taking home either to collapse, to step out of, to work from, where you are releasing people. I would love to know about that and setting yourselves free, because ultimately the only way that this planet is ever going to see any kind of liberation is from souls that know what it feels like to actually fly. And as long as we're still playing these games, you are equally responsible for all of the horrible acts against humanity that are playing out on this earth plane as the governments, the politicians, the religious institutions are, because you're just holding another end of that resonance field.
In case you needed one last trigger on this conversation.
The buck stops here.
Yeah.
It stops with you. The only way we change is if we change. And if you're not willing to, not you, then who? Right? We're here for it. We got you. I hope these people that are wasting their lives doing the things they're doing see this. I hope the people that are beating down people like Teal Swan, I hope they hear this.
Can you imagine what they could be doing with their, like, if they would just release this story, how much magic they could actually create in their own lives and maybe even on the planet for other people? That would be amazing. It'd be beautiful. Like, I'm here for that. So
that's ultimately, that's our life's work. That's what we pour into. That's why I share candidly behind the scenes. That's why I don't hold back on these stories. This is why I have no problem telling you guys exactly what's going on, as long as I've already reconciled what I've seen, so that I'm never dumping on you, right? Because you guys aren't my dumping ground. And you guys, another person is never your dumping ground. You have journals for that. If you're using, the internet for that stuff, please message me. I'll give you a tool for that. And I really, really hope that all of you guys have taken something home that is going to help you guys ground further into your mission, stay a little bit more clear, stay a little bit more on top of the energy currents, and get a little less swept up in the drama that humans love to create on this planet, because they just don't know any better yet at this time. All right, I am sending you guys huge, huge hugs. We can continue this conversation in the group. If you have any questions, you guys got things you got to bring forward, you got things you got to reconcile, we're always an open inbox away. Seriously, I've had a couple of you guys step forward that we've processed together in the inbox and I've helped you guys take apart that assignment of who I am as an archetype or who Violet is or who you are, we're here for it. We're here for you. And if you guys have other conversations that you'd love us to attack in these conversations in consciousness, reach out, let us know. All right. We'll see you guys all next time.